Hello, everyone, and welcome to Early Years Learning Lab. I'm Shane, or as the kids call me, Coach Shane. This kind of podcast or this program is just all about the early years sector and just trying to bring as much value as we can to directors, educators, families, and it's presented by Mini Monstars. So really excited to have our first guest, Donna Skea. How are we going, Donna?
Good. How are you? Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate this.
No, thank you so much for being our first ever guest. It's always it's always hard getting the first ever guest. I'm so thankful for you to come on and looking forward to kind of, picking your brain and seeing kind of what you've done. And did you want to maybe just describe what you've been doing, your background in the early years sector and what you're doing now?
So I've spent the last 30 years actually in the early years.
Yep.
For the first 10 years, I was an educator and I worked specifically with the toddlers, so 18
Cool.
months to 2.5-year-old.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I like the wee ones, I like the little ones. And then I went back to school and got my master's degree and was hired at the college here, the English college, to teach the 3-year career program that in Canada, you need to have a college degree to be able to be a qualified educator.
Yep.
And so I teach now. For the last 21 years, I've been teaching at Vanier College in the early childhood program. And I'm kind of like a generalist
Yeah.
in that. So I teach all the courses. And then 2 years ago, I started my own company called the Infinite Educator. And this company sort of, I felt during, especially after COVID, and how hard it was for educators and, in terms of staff retention, educators,
Yeah.
lots of educators, lots of teachers leaving the field. And I go in and I help them in their classrooms, mentoring, whatever they may need. I give workshops on challenging behavior. I work with I've been hired recently to work with school boards, going in and working with the youngest kindergarten, pre-K, kinders, all of those kind of,
Yep.
and for everything. Like it's like whatever issue comes up, they call me.
For sure. You're the first point of call. That's awesome. No, and obviously that's I guess expect like not only just in the early learning sector, but just staff retention and that sort of stuff. So what would you say, like, I guess for the directors and that sort of stuff, when you go in, what are you seeing in centers and that sort of stuff? Why aren't you seeing or why are you seeing kind of loss of staff, loss of interest, I guess, in teaching and that sort of stuff? What are you seeing there?
Yeah, well, that's a very loaded question,
Yeah.
Shane. I don't.
I'm gonna I'll go get a coffee, and you can just let us.
Uh, no, well, there's a lot of reasons. COVID really did take a toll on the education sector. It was quite challenging. I myself, having to teach courses online to people, like my students wouldn't turn on their screen, so a lot of time I was just talking to myself, which I'm pretty good at, but
Yeah, no,
it gets a little boring after a while.
for sure.
Um, but the children have definitely changed post-COVID. The parents have definitely changed. Um, Financially, we all know across, like particularly in Canada, but we know globally that, things have gotten very expensive post-COVID, and daycare educator salaries have not gone up anywhere.
Yeah,
And most of them are, you know, being paid under or living under the what is considered the poverty line,
yeah,
getting paid just a couple of dollars higher than minimum wage
yeah.
to do a job that is very, 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 very important.
Very important, very underrated as well.
Very underrated. And it was interesting. And I'm not taking away from nurses, doctors, or anybody during COVID. They deserve all of the applause and recognition that they got. But I don't know about where you are in Australia, but here in Canada, our daycares were still open
Yeah,
during COVID. right? And so, but not for everybody, but
Yeah.
for like the doctors, the nurses, the
I think we
people,
had
the
a pretty similar
essential
thing.
workers
Yeah.
needed a place for their children to go. And so the daycare educators worked, and nobody ever sort of said,
Nah.
hey, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
way to go. Thank you for doing that. There was no real recognition there. And I think that really took a toll on a lot of the educators, because one of the things that I can tell you as somebody who's done this job, it is a passion. And Shane, working with children, you've got to love it. There's good days, there's bad days, but and there's a purpose there, and we know what we're doing is important.
For sure.
Right? It's an important thing that we do working with children to make sure that they grow up to be the best people that they can be. And so people just assume that's enough. But
Yeah.
when you can't pay for groceries and you haven't taken a vacation in 5 years and your car is like, from 2002 and like all of these things, it's like, yes, I'm doing it because I love children, but I also need to be paid.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's crazy because I think the outside perspective of childcare and childcare workers in early years is just kind of, we drop the kids off and it's just kind of babysitting, where that's not kind of what, but that's just the outside perspective. So I think somewhere, or we need to try to somehow change the narrative more to the outside, or who's not actually in it every day, who can, we're doing more than that. We're teaching, we're educating, we're nurturing. There's all this stuff that we're doing with the kids, but I feel like the outside perception, we need to try and change that to kind of help us, get more money into the sector, get more, get the educators paid more, and then that way we'd bring in more people, we'd bring in more passionate people and that sort of stuff, and then the whole sector can grow and can overall become a better place, and especially for people that we want to come into the sector, because yeah,
Absolutely, right? Like it's interesting because it's hard to even get new students to come into the program because their parents are telling them, "You're not going to make any money." "Yeah, but
yeah,
I love children." Yeah, but
for
and a
sure.
lot of our students do now. The new trend is that they do our program, they
Yep.
become qualified educators, but then they go on to university and become teachers. So that's not a bad thing. It's
No,
not a
no,
bad thing. No, no,
yeah,
no. It's a good thing, but it still doesn't help or support the lack of really good educators in the field
for
now.
sure. That's exactly right. And I think then I feel, because I'm not sure how it works exactly, but I know in Melbourne and Australia that childcares are run all the way through the year. So so let's say someone like a teacher, they're getting, if they're doing prep to year 12 in Australia, they're getting 12, 13 weeks off a year holiday pay, which is paid for, obviously, and the pay's more. So for someone who can either think, hey, I want to work with kids, and they're super passionate, but they've got an option of going to the kindergarten sector or the childcare sector, or going to the primary schools, you know what I mean? And they're getting that 13 weeks off. It's what most people are what are they going to choose? So we're losing a lot of.
Especially when the educators start having their own children, right? And those children are in the school system and they have their 13 weeks off,
Yeah.
and then who's going to watch them? So there's a whole bunch of, like, when you said what's the issue, I was like,
But for sure.
where do you want me to start and how do you want me to go? Because I could just go and go and go and go and go and go.
Well, first episode, we got to come straight after it. We got to attack it straight away. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Um,
let's jump right in, right? 2
yeah.
feet.
Sure, for sure. And then I guess with the staff retention, that sort of stuff, what are you seeing? But I was also actually thinking another point, that especially with the younger generation now coming through, they have so many more options, so they can do a lot of stuff online. They've, with your TikTok, your YouTube, Facebook, that sort of stuff. There's a lot of young people making $50,000, $60,000 a year just making content online. So
Yes.
there's a lot more options than what there was, let's say 20, 30 years ago. So that could be another reason why, we're not seeing as many people kind of come into the sector and that as well.
Yeah, I think they're not everybody, and like I don't want to
No,
generalize,
no.
obviously, but again, this is the generation that's hearing if you don't make a lot of money, you'll never own a house. If you don't, if you know what I mean, if you
Yeah.
don't make a lot of money, you're not going to be able to have the same lifestyle. Like what I paid for my house, my children will never in their lifetime be able to pay a house like I paid for my house, or even be able to afford a house. So
Yeah.
this is what they're hearing. So they're going into the fields where they know, or being able to create content or going online or whatever it is, going, okay, well, at least here, like they're going for the money,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
not in a negative way, but in a way that they're like, well, at some point in my life, I would like to move out of my parents' basement. At some
yeah.
point in my life, I would like to not have to, have my mom do my groceries and my laundry. At
Yeah.
some point in my life, I would like to be a responsible adult, and so I don't blame them. So you go into fields um, because the money is there and not necessarily for the passion. What we
Mm.
see actually is, and I think this is going to be a trend at some point, is that when that stuff no longer is, I don't know what the
Really?
word would be, but there's no passion left in it for them.
Yeah, yeah,
And it
yeah.
just becomes, okay, well, I've made my money, I bought my house, bought my car, I'm sustained myself. There's no joy, there's no
Yeah,
passion,
it's
there's
not
no
fulfilling for them
happiness, there's
to,
no purpose there,
yeah,
right? Really? I feel like we're gonna see people coming back into this field later on,
for
like,
sure.
yeah,
But
but,
yeah,
just be able to like, okay, wait a minute, like, yeah, it's great to do content and all of this stuff, but at some point they're gonna be like in their 30s going, well, this kind of
yeah,
doesn't really, bring me the joy and the happiness that it once did, and what can I do that's gonna be meaningful?
yeah,
And anything working with children, anything that's sustainable that way,
yeah,
um, you're gonna see them coming back. I've seen that before too. I've seen people who've quit like big corporate jobs and working high in the bank and stuff like that, and they're like, my life was meaningless. I was
yeah, for
working
sure.
12-hour days. Yeah, I had money, but I was miserable.
Mm.
And they are happy as a clam, like,
Yeah, 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 for
working,
sure.
changing diapers and singing songs and raising the next generation. And they're like, now I have purpose and now I feel better.
Yeah.
So I feel like at some point there's going to be a shift back to purpose.
Yeah, for sure. I think for sure. I think there's a few people pushing it now that happiness over. You want to do what brings you that joy, that what brings you that purpose, rather than chasing money. Because if you're unhappy, because you think about work, you're working majority of your time. You want to be happy while you're doing it. So hopefully that sort of thing, and if we can somehow make the early years sector enticing for people and that's their passion, then we're going to see this whole sector get better.
Yes, I agree.
So
I agree. Because I mean, you work with children, you've coached and all of this stuff. I've worked with them for a very long time. I always jokingly say, like, there's nothing better than having a conversation with a bunch of 4-year-olds. Like, there's like nothing is better than that. Like, sitting down and listening to what they have to say and what they have to tell you. I had a little boy the other day come up to me and he goes, "You smell like a lollipop." And I was like, I said to him, I said, "Sir, that was the best compliment anybody has ever given me in my life. I want to smell like a lollipop." And he was looking at me like it was a little weird, but it was the nicest thing he's ever said. "You smell like a lollipop."
uh, that's good. That's so good. What made you, I guess, early on in your career when you first started? When did you realize that that's kind of the path you wanted to go down? Did you always kind of like think about it, or like when you were in like high school, or was that sort of something you went directly for, and that's what you thought you were going to do, or when did you kind of make that realization?
Well, you know how the universe sort of puts things in your path. Um, So, I was in grade 6, I was the cool kid in grade 6, you know? It was the first day of class, and one of the teachers had come into, the classroom and said that they needed 2 volunteers to go work with the kindergarten teacher and help her out in the kindergarten class. So I put my hand up and I said I thought it was a good way to get out of school a little bit and, like not be in class and, that kind of thing. I could do that. Headed down to the kindergarten class. And I think I was there about, I don't know, 35 minutes. And I was like, "Yeah, this is it. This is what I'm doing for the rest of my life." I just totally, absolutely fell in love with it. And I've been on that path ever since. It was just, I just knew. I can't even tell you. I was 12 years old. Like 12-year-olds don't make life decisions at 12 years old. And I just did it. And I was just like, I was just very fortunate. But when you know,
Yeah.
right? There was I had a very good connection with the children. There was a couple of really tough kids in that class that year. That was part of the reason why the teacher needed a little extra assistance, and I
Sure.
connected with them. And I was, I don't know, I just kind of made those really important relationships that you needed, and I really just wanted to spend my whole time there. And as soon as I got to spend time there. I was like, "I wanna be just like Miss Green. I wanna
Yeah,
be just like Miss Green." And funny, like, the other girl that volunteered, she went off and did something in fashion, and, like, it didn't affect her at all, but there was
yeah,
just
yeah.
something for me, that's kind of been my path the whole time, and,
That's
you know,
awesome.
I kind of fell into teaching it when I had my own children, because I realized that it's very hard as an educator to, how do I say this? Like, divide your time.
Yeah.
So I would go in and, like I said, I was working mostly with toddlers, so 18 months to 2.5-year-old.
Yep.
And then I'd come home to my own toddler,
Yeah.
3-year-old, and she'd be like, "Mommy, play with me." And I'd be like, "Oh my
Oh,
God, God, I don't know."
yeah.
I was like, I had nothing left. And then something dawned on me, and I was like, so I'm going to give everything to other people's children and then come home and have nothing for my own. I
Yeah.
said, I don't know if I like that, but I don't want to leave the field. What else can I do? And I'd had students who'd come in and done their training in my classroom and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I really, really liked that aspect of it, of training them and mentoring them and doing all that kind of stuff. I said, I would like to do that. I'm still doing it. I'm still making a difference. I'm still working with children. I'm still working with students. I'm still working with all of that stuff. I'm just not in the classroom, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And so I ended up going back and doing my master's and got hired at the college, and you know
There, the
the
rest
rest
is
is
history.
history.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess with your experience, I guess like educating, teaching, and then seeing all these kids come through your course and that sort of stuff. What do you see? Like, what makes a good educator? What do you see that? Or like what makes an educator run a successful class and have an impact on the kids? What are you seeing that it resonates with the kid?
I think it's anyone who can sort of open themselves up enough to be able to build relationships with children. So knowing to be able to do that, to be able to sit down and sort of pick up on children's nonverbal cues, like if a child's like this to you, like to stay, like, maybe
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
not as comfortable, and like if they're shy, how do you approach a shy child versus like, so somebody who can kind of read them. I find that the students that do best have really good emotional intelligence,
yeah.
that they're able to read other people's emotions well. Um, I find students who are patient.
Yep.
Obviously, you have to be
Gotta
very
have
patient to
patience.
work with children, but also I find the ones that have, and I think this is a big thing, a pretty good sense of humor.
Yeah.
You gotta have a good sense of humor, in the kind way, not in the sarcastic way, but in the kind way where things are going to happen in your classroom, and I could tell you many stories that have happened to me that now are funny, but
Yeah, at the
they
time.
weren't so funny then. Um, the things like poo that lands on your shoe when you think the diaper is clean, and that kind of stuff. And to be able to laugh at yourself, to be able to enjoy, like, because children, one of the things I love most about children is one, they're so authentic, right? If you look like crap that day, they're gonna tell you you
Yeah.
look like crap that day.
Yeah.
Um, but at the same time, they also know when you're authentic.
Yeah.
So when you come into a classroom and you are your authentic self, and you're like, the good, the bad, the ugly, the whole thing, but you're still there and you still show up, they love that.
Yeah,
They
for sure.
love that you can be an authentic person. Like if
Yeah.
you really try too hard, or some people can be weird around children, like they talk too high or they talk to them like they're pets or something.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
it
yeah, yeah.
doesn't necessarily work, but when you bring your authentic self, and I think
Yeah.
ultimately that's what it comes down to, as to be a really good early childhood educator, is you're bringing your authentic self. And then of course you need the tools, right? You need time management, you need to know how to make a routine, you need to know how to group manage your group and all of that stuff. But that all of those things can be taught.
Yeah.
Those things can be taught. Like it's really the personality and the characteristics of the educator to start off, and then everything else can fall into place.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, because for me, because I've been running sports for so long, and so most of the kids we probably see, we're only there for maybe an hour, 2 hours. So for me, it's kind of I couldn't do what I do for the whole day because I'm kind of myself, but I probably turned up 20%, bringing that enthusiasm, enjoyment, and that sort of stuff. But obviously, when you're with them for 8, 9, 10 hours, you've just got to be yourself. Otherwise,
You
you'll
gotta
get
be able to you're right, you have to elevate that energy, but I think if you're gonna do it for the full day, you gotta do it at like a 10%
yeah,
higher,
yeah,
right? You can't
yeah.
necessarily bring it at the 20 or
No,
the
no,
25.
yeah.
You gotta bring it at like sort of the 10% higher, and then you can feel yourself in the car going, like sort of
On the drive
melting
home.
as you're driving away. You're like, okay, no, 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 no. You can't sustain that. Like you can't always be on, right?
Yeah,
So that's where the authenticity comes in, and like so some days is not,
yeah,
not as much energy.
yeah. But
Today
that's
we're
with
gonna keep it
everything, isn't it?
quiet. I we're born and raised and living in Canada. We have some very interesting weather that we have to navigate. So right now we're looking at with the wind chill factor, it's -20.
Yeah. So what happens there? Can you go outside? Like, what's the with the kids and
At right now at this point is right at the point where the government doesn't want kids out at -20,
yeah,
but anything above that. So like let's say it's -10, -12, whatever.
so
Absolutely, kids are head to toe in snowsuits, which take educators a good 30 minutes to
yeah,
get
really, yeah.
everybody top to tail, like the whole 9 yards on. We've got our sleds and our toboggans and our
Okay.
shovels and our, king of the mountain, the snow removal plows come and make these big mountains, and the kids climb up on the top of it, and they run up, they run down, they run up, they run down. So there's a lot of physicality, and I don't know, being in Australia, I'm sure you haven't been head to toe in a snowsuit, but if you've ever had to do head to toe in a snowsuit when you're 3 years old, it's hard. It's
Yeah, for
it's hard.
sure.
Like
Yeah,
you're like put on a weighted suit and then head
yeah.
yourself up
Like
a
a weight
hill. Like
on.
yeah, yeah. The kids usually they get to the top, and then if they slide back down, it kinda looks like they've just fallen haphazardly and like, "Oh my god, it's gonna go downhill." They're not they're not necessarily doing it with much zest and gusto, they're just exhausted from it. And it's good too because the fresh air is good for them, the physicality of it, the movement, they sleep better, they eat better. We still try to the best of our ability, not everybody, but we try to the best of our ability to make sure that children get out
Yeah,
every day at least a little bit. I
Yeah.
mean, summertime here, because it's so short and so amazing or whatever, we usually end up spending most of our days outside. As soon as it starts to get warm and we don't, it's splash pants and
Yeah, yeah.
lighter jackets and things like that, we're like,
Let's go.
out we go. Like
For sure.
yeah, so yeah, we try as much as we possibly can to get children to be outside. It's I believe that the physicality of children being able to have that gross body movement and
Yeah,
all of that
yeah.
kind of stuff really is an important part of a child's development, of their learning, of their growth, of them figuring out their body. What are they capable of doing? And I think, and you probably will agree with me, and maybe not, this is where we could get into contention, but I feel um, that that gross motor, like big body movements and children being able to do these big things is really where um, their self-confidence and their self-esteem really starts to show,
For sure.
because, in our playgrounds, we have these little things like the little monkey bars, to get
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
across,
Yeah.
and when a child finally makes it across the monkey bar, he might as well, won the Super
Yeah,
Bowl or
yeah,
like
yeah.
the Olympics or something because he's finally done it all by himself and he thinks he's great and there's that
Yeah.
confidence and that amazing feeling that he has.
For sure. And for me, well, because I do like, I've always taught sport and stuff. And I do think sport's a great teacher for kids because what they're essentially doing, you said it exactly right. Because obviously at the start, and what we obviously, when we're going into childcare and that sort of stuff, something as simple as running or, maybe like a jump or a star jump or balancing, it could be the first time the kids are doing this sort of stuff. So one, I talk a lot about regressions and making things as simple as we can to start off with. And then as they get it, making it more challenging and that sort of stuff. But a lot of the times, which some, people might say, or I feel like we've kind of gone away from a bit, is like the children are going to fail at doing some, like kicking, for us, for Australians, kicking an Aussie rules football is quite a difficult skill for kids because they have to use both their upper body, dropping the ball with their hands, and kind of getting their foot in the right place so the ball kind of leaves their foot in the right way. So that's a skill that we can regress. And what I like to do is try see where the kids are at when they first start. And a lot of the kids, might not be able to do it, but as you regress them and once they kind of get that skill, you can see how happy, and as you said, the happiness, the joy of overcoming a challenge. And it's in any sort of, like, as adults, it's the same thing. I see a lot of people in the gym or whatever, going from not being able to, lift the bar on like a bench press to doing that. That gives someone confidence as well. So if you take that back to the kids, it's kind of the same thing. It might be a little bit smaller. It might be, they got across the balance beam without falling off. But it might have taken them 30 tries, but they've gone, they've fallen off, they've got back up, they've tried again. That sort of stuff for me I think is a great teacher for kids, especially as they kind of progress their life.
Yeah, especially, absolutely. And I feel like the example of the balance beam is very good when you're talking about a child who does fall off a couple of times, like 10 times, 20 times. And then one, they learn perseverance, right? They learn to stick to something and they learn resilience. It's like and it's just something as simple as that
Yeah.
balance beam or whatever. Like, I'm going to do this until I get it,
Yeah,
you
for
know?
sure.
And to me, I feel like that's a really good life lesson to, keep trying. It's okay. Don't worry. Like, you're not gonna get hurt. You're not gonna I promise you, when your body is ready, you will get across the balance beam. And that's what it is too, right? It's helping children make the brain body
Yeah.
connection, right?
Sure.
How can I, like you said, having the upper body and the lower body moving at the same time? How do I get my body to do what I want it to do? I saw him do it. Coach
Yeah.
Shane did it, and he was like fabulous. How do I do that? How do I get my brain to
Yeah.
tell my body to bend and drop and kick and move and be able to do it? And then when it does come together, it's like, wow. And you never know. Like at one time make like me in my kindergarten class, you never
Yeah.
know you next thing you know, you have yourself a professional footballer and like
Yeah.
it's fabulous.
For sure. And then they can take that like something as like when you're doing these sort of gross motor skill stuff, and obviously fine motor skills as well, is they're learning that spatial awareness. And that's when you transition that to the classroom, it's, they're not running into tables, they're not running into like other kids and that sort of stuff.
Not so clumsy.
They're not so clumsy, and that's kind of then we're getting less bumps on the head and less bumps, that sort of stuff. So that's why for me, I've always been a big component of gross motor skills is something we should teach all the way through from the youngest, because I've always worked with kids, but I also used to work with youth kids, teaching them like how to squat, how to lunge, all these basic motor patterns, which it's 80% of the kids, maybe 75%, do not know how to squat properly, which is one of the most basic motor skills that we can do. And like they're somewhere between, that somewhere we've just stopped teaching kids how to move their body correctly. And then, down the track, as we get older, people start having sore knees, sore hips, sore ankle, that sort of stuff. But if they had have, learned that skill properly and, just kind of all it takes is, 10, 15 minutes a day to kind of teach someone this for the rest of their lives. And then that sort of stuff won't be there in their, they're not going to, and especially for athletes who want to get better at sport, if they need that, if they haven't been taught the correct stuff, they're starting from so far behind from someone who has. So I think that should be something that I don't know how we could do it, but back in the day, I used to think that I wanted to somehow get gyms in all high schools so we can teach. That was one of my goals when I was younger, but I kind of went away from that. But that was something that I thought it should just be mandatory. Get people in the gym, get their body moving. Health is like one of the biggest things we need for our, what do they say? Health is wealth. Is that the saying? So yeah, I've gone on a bit of a tangent there, but that's kind of that's my kind of background and stuff like that.
Because I was like, I'm an old lady here, and I went to my wonderful yoga class this morning about movement and knee alignment and hands over shoulders and like stretching and moving and I've always been very physical. I've always been somebody that needs to move. I don't know if that makes sense, but I
Yeah, for
need to
sure.
move. And I've always been, I loved going to the gym and stuff like that, but right now I'm in that phase where I'm really enjoying that whole yoga,
Oh, for sure.
stretching, like that. As you get older, it's also about mobility, right? Like if you
Longevity.
don't use it, you're gonna lose it. So I don't want to lose it.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. No, that's great
And
too.
I love that in art, like what I'm seeing too is that, and one of the things that we've been teaching is we also bring those practices into our teaching of the children, like so teaching our students to teach the children about things like yoga and like
Yeah,
and they've changed it all into like very child friendly poses and things that children can do, lots of breath work,
mm,
a lot of like stretching out their body and sort of mindfulness and things
yeah,
like that where it doesn't necessarily have to always be like, oh, I'm gonna have to
no,
like move my body and blah, blah, blah. But
for sure.
also being aware of your body and being aware of your space and understanding balance and teaching them like tree pose and stuff like that. Okay, today we're gonna be a tree, but it's a really windy day.
Yeah,
So let's make sure that your feet are down on the ground, like press down really, 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 really hard. Squeeze those toes. Here I'm coming, and windy, 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 like, and so
for
kids are
sure.
like, "Blah."
Nah, that's great for sure. Well, I think we've gone through a lot of stuff, but did you have any? What else would you say? Like, what are some key components, I guess, for educators, for directors to run a successful center? Like, what do you think, or just a couple of things that they can do, just to kind of that's not crazy, different to what they're doing, just few little things. What?
Little things. Well, I think one of the things that I've really been kind of pushing, and I believe that, every classroom should be considered or seen as like a community. That every child in each classroom has a place, has a purpose, feels safe, feels comfortable in that classroom. And that also can expand out into the larger center itself. So that's where you could say where directors will really um, uh, should look around in their centers and say, is this really a community? Does everybody have a place? Does everybody feel safe? Is everybody supported? Do they feel like they have a voice? Can they say things I was working with a director once, I'll give you a quick story, and she really loved, because now remember, it's January and it's winter and it's -20. She really loved having beach day in February where the kids brought their bathing suits and they turned up the heat
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
there was water play and all of this stuff. And the educators hated it. It
Oh,
was so much work. But the director loved it so much. And so she says to me, like, they're fighting me on it. I said, well, like, do you have to change all the children into bathing suits? Do you have to make sure that nobody slips and falls in the water? Do you have to? She goes, no, it's them. I said, so then why are you fighting
yeah,
them on something that they don't want to do?
yeah,
Because
for
but the
sure.
kids love it. I said, but if the educators don't, you're taking away from the children because they're just going to sit there being miserable. So sometimes we have to put what the educators are capable of doing, what they can do, what they like to do.
Yeah,
I mean, they replaced it with something else that was fun too. Like I think they had like a gym day or
yeah.
change
But
classroom day or something that was a little less.
yeah, I also think if they, if like I haven't, I'm not saying I know a lot about that sort of, the director and educator relationship and that sort of thing. But if you give as a director, it could be something where she comes with the beach idea, and then, but rather than saying we're doing this, say how can we do this? Get all the educators involved and say how can we do this that
The
it'll.
best case scenario here? Like what would be the best thing? Is it do they have to bring their bathing suits? Do they have to like you're
Yeah, for
asking
sure.
kids to have their bathing suits on and running around in February. And I know in Australia it's summertime for you guys, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not summertime here. Like
No,
and your weather, even your winter is not even as bad as our.
it's bad, but nowhere near as bad. But that's what I was thinking. If you give, like, I guess, if you give not the responsibility, but if you can have the educators kind of take ownership and come up with something, at least they kind of feel like they've created something and they're part of it. So if you give them that responsibility, they're more likely to be inclined to not do what you want, but like help kind of that. It's the rather than saying we have to do this, what can we do together to come up with the best idea so everyone's kind of involved in that process rather than just having one person say. Does
And
that
so
make
what
sense?
we ended up doing, what we worked together and we came up with a list of like 10 things to do for Carnival, because that's what they wanted to do for Carnival. They gave 10 ideas and they gave it out to all the educators, and the educators checked off the ones that they wanted to do. And then it was majority of,
Sure.
like if everybody wanted to do, I don't know, Purple Day or whatever, and then everybody did Purple Day. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
That's great.
so
Yeah.
again, it's like a democracy. It's a community. So people had a say in what they wanted to do. So the 5 days of Carnival were picked by the educators based on what they felt was doable in their classroom. Because you're also looking at like in an um early years setting, right? Um, you're talking infants and you're talking toddlers and you're talking, so, beach day in an infant classroom can be very, very, very challenging, so, and a toddler classroom as well. So
My son
anyway,
was
so it
doing,
was, and ultimately,
yeah.
I feel like it's that community. I, if for and to look around. Does Are your educators happy? Do they feel supported? If they come to you and say, "Hey, I'm not really sure about this child. These things are happening. I'm not quite sure. Can somebody help me and support me?" And not sort of come back with the, "Well, you should know what you're doing."
Yeah.
More of like, like not everybody knows everything about
Yeah.
all of it. You know what I mean? Even
I,
I
I think
sometimes have
everyone
to
does.
sit back and kind of go, hmm, let me watch him a little bit more because I'm really not sure
Sure.
what I'm seeing here, you know? So like this is a really big thing that I'm seeing in terms of staff retention. If the staff feels heard, if
Yeah.
the staff feels like they're part of the decision making and are part like and that they're supported and they get the help that they're needed, they're not shamed for not knowing what they're doing,
For sure. Well,
they stay.
yeah, and like it's all learning. Everyone's always learning, so we can't expect people to know. Especially if they're relatively new, and or even 5, 10 years in, we're always learning new things. Which I think that's great advice, and I think that'll help a lot of directors. Do you see much? So, like an educator who's looking for growth and trying to potentially become a director themselves.
Oh yeah.
How is there like a way you've seen that's worked that like some center has implemented that has a great growing kind of system for their educators?
Um, well, it depends on the center. The smaller centers, there's not that much of a of movement,
Yep.
but here, I'm not sure in Australia. You'll have to forgive me, but here
Ah,
in
yeah.
this province in Canada, we have government-run centers, which are like for the most part, they're like the cream of the crop, like they're but they are, there's a parent board. The director has to, she's hired by the board. She
Okay.
has to show the government where she's spending the money, all of that kind of stuff. It's not a for-profit, but it's a non-profit organization.
Yeah.
In those situations, there is more opportunity for growth
Yeah.
because directors may come and go, they retire, whatever, and so other people get put into those positions, and then other people get moved into like a ped consultant or
Yeah.
assistant director or things like that. So there is a budget for those kinds of things. There is an opportunity for a little bit of growth, head educator, mentoring others. There's a lot of growth that way.
Yeah.
It's so funny though. There's a lot of the older educators who are like, Donna, I want your job. And I said, "Oh, I'm not going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah.
So you gotta wait a few more years." But yeah, I mean, so there's those kind of opportunities. There's movement because there's so many daycares. There's so
Yeah.
many places to go. Um, I had a friend that I worked with as an educator, I want to say back in the day because I'm old or whatever. So back in the day, and I heard um, that there was a really good, lucrative daycare director position opening. And I called her up and I said, "This one's for you, honey. Like, this is for you." And she
Yeah.
goes, "You don't want it?" I said, "Nope, I don't want it." I said, "This is for you." And sure enough, she applied and she got it. And she has been there, oh, I would probably say 10 or more years now. And she has just made the place amazing. And she just got approval to build a second building to get another 80 children in. And she's just been a rock star.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like the community, and as you know, the community, the early childhood community is very small, and we all know each other, and we're all very supportive of each other. And I think that's all part of it too, right? That the right kind of people are going into this profession, and we want to lift everybody up. We don't want to. We're not here. We're not corporate climbing. There's no whatever, right? It's all about the children. It's all about what's best for everybody and for the children and for their families. And so You know, like if something comes up that I feel that somebody could do an amazing job at, I don't bat an eyelash. They're like, Donna, you'd be great at this. And I said, no, I got enough going on. I'm good. You know, like, and
Yeah.
you try it. You go do it. Like I want to push people to be the best that they can be in their you know, in this field because we need more and more people. And if they feel like they're adding and they're contributing as much as they possibly can, then you know, we're all better for it. It's not just about me, it's not about whatever, it's about everything else. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, awesome. No, thank you so much for coming on. I think
No worries.
before we kind of head off, any kind of final thoughts or anything that you wanted to kind of touch on before we kind of head off? But I think what we've spoken about, it's been great. I think it's going to be really helpful for a lot of people. So, because I'll get this clipped up and all that sort of stuff. So, did you have any final thoughts before we kind of finish up? And any, we want to speak to anyone? Yeah.
Well, I just want to sort of talk to the educators themselves. And I just feel like there's not enough opportunities, not enough people pat you on the back and tell you that you're doing a great job. And a lot of us, and I know this because I did the job, a lot of us second guess, did we do okay? Was this fine? Did we, like, oh, I got upset and maybe I shouldn't have gotten upset or whatever. You're doing a fabulous job. Keep going. The children love you. The parents are so appreciative of you. You're amazing. And just know that you're doing a great job and then just keep doing it, man. Just
Yeah.
keep doing it.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. That's awesome. But yeah, once again, thanks so much for coming on. Now, before you head off, I used to watch a podcast and they used to ask this question. So it's, who do you think? And you've obviously got a lot of contacts in the space. Who do you think would be good to come onto the podcast? But whoever you say, you have to try get them on for us. So, okay, so it kind of, especially being new, especially being a new podcast, it's always hard to get guests on. But if I feel like because you've been in the space so long, you'd know some good people that will be good, and then but you have to try and get them
I
on.
don't necessarily have a name for you, but one of the things that we're really pushing here in Canada is that we're trying to promote having more males in the field of early childhood. And I think, um, being a guy in early years and all of that stuff, I think that also would be a great discussion to have. What are some of the issues that male educators have going into classrooms, going into the center, things that may stop them from doing it. In the past, I've had male students that have been fantastic. They are just as compassionate and just as kind and a little bit more goofy, which is also not a terrible thing for children to experience.
Yeah.
And I think that the more that we can expose how important it is for children to see both male and female educators and being exposed to that kind of positive role models in their lives, I feel like that's something that I think would be very good for your podcast too, because I know that it's a global issue too.
Oh yeah.
I know that I was in Scotland last summer, and because I never stop working, I contacted the university in Inverness, and um, they also have an early childhood program. And we had the same discussion about not enough males in the program, not enough, of that kind of diversity. We need to have both male and female in.
It is definitely a real issue though, isn't it? Because I've probably been to, because obviously our program goes into a lot of different centres, and maybe I've come across, I would have been 100+ centres and maybe come across 5 to 6 male educators, in all those. So it's definitely something that needs to, definitely would be a good topic to discuss. So I do have, hopefully I'm just speaking to someone now who is a male educator, and so that could be a good chat with him. So no, but thank you so much.
That would be a good conversation. Yeah.
For sure.
I can't, I mean, I can't think of a guy off the top of my head, but I
That's right.
know that is
Well, I lost you.
definitely something that we are, that we're thinking about too. We're trying to recruit more males.
Nah, for sure. But if you do think of it, someone, let me know. Send me a message, and but I'll just quickly sign off. Thanks everyone so much for watching today's session, today's podcast, Early Years Learning Lab, presented by Mini Monstars. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you've taken something away. As always, share some of the videos to friends, educators, directors that you think will get value from this. But Donna, thanks so much for coming on, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Shane.
All right, bye.